Arts Commission to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Ward.
Present. Present.
Commissioner Kucharski.
Here.
Commissioner Barraza.
Present.
Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings.
Present.
Commissioner Miller. Absent. Commissioner Apuda. Absent. Vice Chair Dolan.
Here.
Chair McCoy. Absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We will now begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everybody please stand? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll now start with the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes. I would like to make a comment, though. This morning, we had an issue with the Zoom link registration where people couldn't register, but it is up and working now.
Okay, so we don't anticipate any problem for this,
No.
but there have been?
No, not at
Okay.
all.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other proposed changes to the agenda? In that case, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So that's approved by Cummings, seconded by Singh. Can we do this by affirmation?
We'll have to do a roll call.
Okay.
Commissioner Ward.
Approved.
Commissioner Kucharski.
Approved.
Commissioner Barraza.
Yes.
Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings.
Yes.
Vice Chair Dolan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
This item is approved. We will now move on to approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes from July 17th, 2023?
There are no changes.
In which case, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
Motion by Cummings. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Singh.
Commissioner Ward.
Approved.
Commissioner Kucharski.
Yes.
Commissioner Barraza.
Yes.
Commissioner Singh.
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings.
Yes.
Vice Chair Dolan.
Yes.
Motion passes.
The item is approved. We will now move on to subcommittee reports. This item is a discussion item for the commission, and no public comments will be taken related to this item. Does the Cultural Arts Plan Subcommittee have an update it would like to provide to the commission?
Yes, there will be 2 community stakeholder meetings to discuss the art grant guidelines. Both of them will be at 5 o'clock at the Fresno Arts Council. The first one will be on August 31st, and the second one will be on September 6th.
Thank you.
Will any email be sent out for that?
I'll ask them to send an email out.
Okay, thank you.
Does the Parks Master Plan Subcommittee have an update it would like to provide to this commission?
At present, there's no report. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Mr.
we'll-
Chairman, I just wonder, when are we going to have a meeting of the master plan subcommittee? Who could answer that?
Commissioner Barraza, we are in transition. When I come to my report, I will introduce the new Measure P person, and we will get that back up and running.
Thank you.
Great. And so we'll now move on to member reports and comments. As a reminder, this is a time for commission members to report anything they feel important for the public or commission to know, but it is not a time for discussion. Commissioner Ward, do you have any comments?
I received some feedback from community advocates that surfaces should be considered when new parks are being put in case they'll be the site of future artwork, so that there be some space set aside that would be appropriate for murals.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Kucharski?
I have nothing to share at this time.
Okay. Commissioner Cummings?
Not at this time, thank you.
Commissioner Singh?
Yes. Well, I actually wanted to play like a video, but I will maybe save that for our next meeting. And so essentially, this past weekend, I was on the organizing side of a basketball tournament hosted by the nonprofit I work with, Jakarta Movement. And it was great. It was fantastic. It was focused on South Asian hoopers and people all the way from Bay Area down to LA. Actually, up from Canada came to the tournament, which was held at Fresno State. It was a huge success, but afterwards I had a debrief with some of our kind of co-hosts of the tournament, one being Guru Nanak Sports Club, GNSC, which is based here in Fresno. And some really fruitful points came out of that conversation. We were talking about like, hey, like, you know, we had such like great hoopers come out. Like why aren't more tournaments held in Fresno? And like, you know, what is that like lack of like, you know, what's that kind of gap? And essentially they had like, these are on the ground kind of like folks that are training students how to play ball for free. They like literally built their own basketball. They pooled money together and built a private basketball court on Shields and Grantland. And they were just like, because we don't have the facilities, right? Like we don't have indoor courts. We don't have courts that like, you know, are accessible to, you know, people all throughout Fresno. And it really got me thinking. I was like, you know, what are we doing? Like this is probably the biggest sport in the U.S. next to football, next to soccer. And I really feel like our emphasis on basketball needs to increase within the city of Fresno. And so I'm just sharing my thoughts because I truly do believe that like because I mean, they were saying like when you have tournaments, it gives players something to look forward to, all that training that they're putting in, it makes it worth it. It makes it seem like, okay, we have some goal that we want to like achieve, right? Like, you know, training for the year, and at this tournament, we're going to come together and win. So really, I know that this isn't meant to be a discussion, so next time we meet, I wanted to ask if we could get some sort of data of, one, how many basketball courts are in Fresno, how many indoor courts are in Fresno, and additionally, how much funding is being put into programming for basketball as well, right? And in terms of like funding for like repairs and stuff, if you want to include all those in the numbers as well, I would greatly appreciate it. But I just want to kind of run down of like, how much are we actually investing into this sport that's super popular?
Great, thank you. Commissioner Barraza?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I wanted to acknowledge the hard work of City Park staff in the implementation of a project in Southeast Fresno that Phillips Park is having new grass. It reseeded or kind of refurbished. I don't know what the correct term is. And what I find interesting that implementing one of those projects takes a lot of logistical work, because the folks that typically use the park had to be relocated. And I know that it's not simple, because there will be some folks that will not be happy when you have to move them from the regular setting as they're accustomed to. But I was able to see the start to almost the finish of the project, and I'm really looking forward to see that wonderful green grass. However, the creation of more soccer fields becomes an important issue, because if we don't have adequate facilities to utilize for the sport of soccer, which is played at that facility, then the grass gets overused and it doesn't grow healthy. So, but I wanted to just, it was interesting for me to observe the start and what it's almost the finished part of that project. And I thank staff for that, because I know it's not easy and just to get it started is hard. The other part, another area that I also want to acknowledge the help of city park staff is I participate with a nonprofit in Southeast Fresno. It's a volunteer effort for us to plant trees where we get grant money from the state. No Measure P money involved, all volunteers. And I'm glad that we're getting a lot of good cooperation from city staff to identify 3 possible sites, parks in Southeast Fresno where we are going to be planting new trees. And that's exciting, and I'm really happy that we are working together in implementing that. And my good friend, Commissioner Cummings, she being involved with Fresno, Tree Fresno is the name. I'm looking forward to partner with other groups that may want to come to Southeast Fresno and help us plant more trees on our city parks. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have no comments, other than to point out that, hey, it rained and was less than 90 degrees in August right here in the Central Valley. That was noteworthy. Okay, we will now move on to City Administration and Parks staff reports and comments. Does anybody from the administration have any reports or comments for the commission?
Good evening, commissioners. I don't have any reports tonight. I'm Jennifer Reese, Deputy City Manager, but I'll defer to Director Aguirre. I know he has updates to share.
That would be the park staff.
Thank you, commissioners. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce a new employee, Ms. Gayton, if you can stand up, please. This is Sarah Gayton. She's new to the Parks Department. She will be working and handling Measure P. So we'll be working with each and every one of you, and look forward to receiving some communications from Sarah. And she will be presenting the annual report workshop to you tonight. So you'll see a lot of Sarah here in the near future. Thank you, Sarah. In addition to that, I do have 2 additional updates. The Cultural Arts Plan, that agreement did go to council on August 10th and was adopted by council with the commissioner's red line recommendations. In addition to that, we did receive approval for the agreement between the City of Fresno and the Arts Council. The agreement has been signed by all parties to date, waiting on a couple documents, and we will issue a notice to proceed to begin the grant guidelines for that process, and we anticipate the grant guidelines. Commissioner Ward, I don't want to speak for you, but I believe we were shooting for next meeting, the 25th. Is that still accurate?
Yes, that's the goal.
Okay. So the goal is September 25th. Upon recommendation, that will go to council in October for adoption, and then we will start the process on granting out the dollars. So just wanted to highlight that. And then finally, many of you have probably seen the communications, but our team has been extremely busy with the outreach efforts for our dedicated senior center. Just want to give you an update as to how many events we've had and how many we have upcoming. So far, we've had 9 open houses, and open houses have been in each and every district, council district. We have 8 pop-up events. These are at our senior centers, senior living centers, and in conjunction with our CBOs, our community-based organizations. In addition to that, we've leveraged events. We've had tables at various events targeting seniors. So far, we've held 6. We have 3 more upcoming. So once we are done with this, the end of this month, we will have 35 different outreach events to get output or input from all the community members. So just wanted to highlight the efforts that the Parks Department has been going through to make sure that we are inclusive of the community and making sure that we are getting all input back for this, this great facility we will have. So that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to know when are the guidelines coming to this commission? You might have said it, but I didn't catch it.
It's okay. That's what we're shooting for next meeting, September 25th, having the guidelines in front of the commission for recommendation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next meeting is September
Todd's not here. We were checking on that calendar. I believe the 25th was the next meeting. I think that was printed in error. I believe we have 2 in October and 2 in November. We'll confirm, but correct that.
I also have a question, and I appreciate the process for the cultural arts programming and the grant guidelines. What about the process for the sort of recreational programs? Will there be a future, because my understanding is that there will be a future process for nonprofit organizations that would like to apply for Measure P funding to support programming in parks. So what's the timeline on that?
Commissioner Cummings, that'll be our October, November meetings. The 2 that we have, those will be the hearings that community members will have the opportunity to come and propose and speak upon their needs.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron, I'll just say that I have actually seen the communications come out around the senior center, so it's a good step in the right direction.
Good, thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to unscheduled communication. Would any member of the public like to speak on any issue within the jurisdiction of this commission? If so, you will have up to 3 minutes. Any issue within the jurisdiction, as a reminder, if you'd like to comment on the scheduled workshop regarding the Measure P 2022 annual report, now is the time to make a comment. And if you would like to make a comment regarding any of the scheduled hearings, comments will be taken when each item is called.
We have one speaker on Zoom, Kyle Lopez-Schmidt.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Commission. Kyle Lopez-Schmidt. I'm the Executive Director of the South Tower Community Land Trust, which is an organization that was born out of organizing for what we call Broadway Park. On city documents, it's called South Tower Park. Wanted to come to speak about a couple of issues that we've experienced related to the park design process and elevate those for anything that your commission can do to help our specific park, as well as these are really great lessons learned for kind of future process and policy that might be applied to other parks in the community engagement process. Like I said, we've been organizing around this park since the very start, 2017, uncovered a plot within the city of Fresno to quietly rezone the property and sell it without any community input. So this relationship with the city all along has been one of challenge and trying to keep public land public. And we've really succeeded in many ways in keeping this land from being rezoned. And we're persistent and patient long enough for Measure P resources to become available and fund our neighborhood park. And we're really grateful for that. However, we've wanted to stay engaged in the design process because it's really important to us. And what we found is kind of there's been some scheduled times at 30%, 60% where our feedback has been gathered, but not transparency in how it's been applied and what's been included and not. And most recently with the 90% design package, we found some details in the park that are really contrary to what we've wanted there. And we've tried to kind of voice that at the Tower Design Review Committee. And I'm trying to continue to voice that to City of Fresno staff. Included in that, really getting down to the details, there's 2 concrete block walls that border the park, which our community has always been wanting to have murals engaged with it. And this is kind of that confluence of parks and art space that's your commission's purview. And what's specified on the plans is what's called a split face concrete masonry unit, which if you're familiar with like the really rough faced concrete block that isn't conducive for murals is the type of block that's specified there. Further to the bike racks, there's a Tower District designed bike rack, the purple ones that say Tower on them that we'd like to see in the park, but what is specified is a out-of-state prefabricated bike rack. And also there's kind of these silo busting issues that we really need to engage in around parks and public works, as access to our park is not accessible from Broadway south. There is no sidewalks on either side of the street, and not in the plans is any sort of handicap ramp to get from the sidewalk onto the street to go south. So there's barriers to accessibility that violate ADA law, and we've continued to raise these issues and not found audience within the Parks Department. So really asking for your help in elevating this, and had met with Commissioner Ward to highlight these issues as well. So really appreciate your attention to these matters. Thanks.
There are no more speakers.
It looks like we have one from the public. Sarah Parks.
I'm sorry, I didn't fill out a card.
Ooh, okay, well, you're still allowed to speak. You have 3
Thank you.
minutes.
Good evening, commissioners, park staff, administration. Nice to see you all this evening. The first comment I wanted to make is I really want to commend the Cultural Arts Plan Subcommittee for your incredible work in a very condensed timeline to create a really beautiful plan that I think is going to serve the city of Fresno and our arts community well. And I'm just really excited about the pathway that that project has taken, and looking forward to the grant guidelines and to seeing arts projects happening in our community in the near future. So thank you to that subcommittee. I also wanted to make a couple of comments about the workshop this evening. So I took some time to review the presentation, and I assume that we're going to see a more thorough report when the actual annual report is distributed. But I just wanted to note that I can definitely see and understand how what's in here is meeting kind of the minimum requirements of the ordinance. But I'd like to really ask you to consider, how can this annual report go above and beyond that? This is really an opportunity to celebrate, right, all of the successes that Measure P have generated in our community. If you look at the city's Facebook page for parks, there's lots of stuff happening. And so I just really I hope that we will see that documented and demonstrated in this annual report. Specifically on the implementation of the Parks Master Plan, there are a couple of things. So implemented goals was pursuing grants. What grants were awarded, and what are they going to help support? What projects will they fund in the future? Maintenance, creating a maintenance guidelines, identifying target maintenance levels. Does that exist? Are we going to see that documented in the report? Moving on to the active transportation plan. I'm so excited to see the crosswalks installed, 3 miles of sidewalk. I hope that the report will actually tell us where those projects happen and how they relate to the highest need neighborhood requirements, to really help create transparency for taxpayers and for our community. So as you're having a discussion tonight after the workshop, just consider how we can do a little bit more to really help Fresno understand what Measure P has accomplished in the last year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I follow up on public comment? Aaron, what is the way in which public input is incorporated into these design discussions?
You're talking about of a new park?
Yeah, we're talking about the South Tower and how that process has gone with public input through the design development.
So we've had various outreach meetings with the community to receive input. I know this park here had a lot of input from the neighborhood and surrounding homes. So all that's taken, it's kind of compiled, similar to what we've done in other, like the South Peach project. You know, have various concepts on easels. In this case, it was a Zoom meeting, so we had various options. We had surveys, getting input from the community as to what's been kind of the most need of the park in their eyes, and then taking that data and really seeing how the numbers kind of come out, and then designing it with the community's input in that sense. So for instance, using South Peach as an example. In that instance, we heard a lot that soccer, basketball, and other amenities were included. So if you look at the next rendition of that, it includes the community input. So same with this park here that we're talking about, and others alike.
It sounds like there's some very specific community input that has not been, for whatever reason, incorporated into the design. Is there a procedure for communicating what is and isn't taken into the design, and what the criteria are for that?
So it really depends on some of those items if there's a city standard. I know the city of Fresno has a standard CMU wall design that they go with. Dependent on other items, bike racks, I know there's a city standard for bike racks. So there's a number of items that are standardized throughout the design process, whether it's a park, whether it's a roadway, whether it's a median island. So we abide by the city standards in a lot of cases.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? In which case, we will move on to the workshop items. Our first, someone from the Parks Department like to begin the presentation for ID 23-1263, scheduled workshop for commission review and input for the Measure P 2022 annual report pursuant to FMC Section 7-1509, parens E, parens 8.
Well, first of all, good evening to everybody, and thank you for having me. I'm extremely nervous because I'm just meeting all of you, but I'm happy to be here and be a part of this big project for our city. I will be presenting a very concise version of our annual report, which was sent out last Monday. Hopefully you all have had some time to review that. Just wanted to spend a few minutes here going through some of the highlights of the annual report, and then also just making mention that this report is a little bit off. It's 2021 through 2022, so we are getting started on 2023 right now. So any feedback that you have, we are totally welcoming it and adopting it to our follow-up plan for 2023. So let's just keep that in mind. So in the annual report, based on the 5 items required to report on as outlined in the ordinance, we did present some information about the percentage of Fresnans that live within a half mile of a park. We presented information about the number and percentage of Fresnans accessing the parks programs. We did talk about the implementation of the parks master plan, the implementation of the active transportation plan, and the implementation of deferred maintenance and improvements existing to the existing parks and recreational facilities. The parks, well, first off, we're going to start off with the percentage of Fresnans that live within a half mile of a park. The Parks Department was committed to increasing access to parks. Based on GIS analysis, we were able to calculate that 40% of Fresnans are within a half mile walking distance to a park. That is a 5% increase from 2020. So in total, the 40% of Fresnans equals out to 222,720 Fresnans who have access to these parks within walking distance. We also mentioned some information about the percentage of Fresnans who are accessing parks programs. Due to the nature of the seasons that these programs run, some of the information went into the next fiscal year, but we still did include a total of 12 months of data. The most used program that we accounted for was the aquatics program, and it accounted for 16,000 children and almost 4,500 adults. But altogether, if we count all of the programs that were used throughout the year, we had a total impression of 39,850 Fresnans that used the programs. And in the annual report, you will see a description of each program and more detailed information about what those programs are offering our people. Mm-hmm.
Do we break out in these larger segment, like how many people are participating in aquatics programs, for example? Do we break out where the participants come from in terms of how many are coming from our highest need neighborhoods, et cetera?
You know what? In reviewing the annual the report, I don't think it goes down that far. But it's definitely something that, a feedback that we're going to take. Like I said, we're starting to work on the 2023, and we want to know what information is important to all of you. So that's definitely something that I can keep in mind for the following report. But I think the furthest that we break it down is as far as how many people participated in each of the programs.
Commissioner Dolan, just to add to that, we do have registration signups for our swim lessons that will give us the demographics that we can, but we don't, our recreation swim, which has, what was it, roughly 20,000 folks, we will not have that information, but we will have swim lessons.
The lessons, okay.
That we can map.
Great. So it may not be in the plan now, but we have the data to add that to it if we wanted to. Is that, am I
Yes, sir.
understanding?
Yes.
Okay,
I have a question as well.
sure.
Yeah, I was just curious, for your programs, do you do a breakdown of how much the cost is per participant?
We do not have that information on there.
That might be.
So it kind of varies. Swim lessons for Fresno residents is free. We do have the youth fee waiver. Now, again, in this report, the youth fee waiver was not in place. Again, as Sarah mentioned, the time frame for this report wasn't in place yet, but we can definitely put what the cost of our activities are for various camps and recreational type programs.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see which programs, are more cost-friendly or not to scale up or scale down, and based on, how they're being utilized.
Right, and I can tell you for the recreational swim, why we got rid of that fee. It cost us more money than we were collecting. It made absolutely no sense. So one of the things we did through the master fee schedule was eliminate that cost for our residents.
Great, cool, thank you.
Yeah, and like we mentioned, I'm going to get all of this feedback, and I love it because it helps me build on what we have now so that we can make a really good one. Next, we also, the annual report, the following item will be the implementation of the Parks Master Plan. The funding generated from Measure P provides resources to address the goals and recommendations outlined in the Parks Master Plan. And along with that, there were 9 goals outlined in the master plan, which are funding, maintaining, improving, expanding, securing, connecting, partnering, advocating, and celebrating. So along with each of those 9 goals, there were also recommendations in the master plan outlined to help accomplish those goals. So again, in the plan, you will see some more of the goals that were implemented, but here we outlined for funding, we were in pursuit of grants for parks, land acquisition, and development, including funding opportunities that support community development, public health, urban greening, and environmental stewardship. For the maintaining goal, we created maintenance guidelines identifying target maintenance levels at each site, maintenance standards, and work plans. For the improving goal, we implemented the 2017 Parks Master Plan park type requirements for site amenities, program, and access. On the expansion goal, we targeted expansion of Fresno's park open space, trails, and existing urbanized high needs, park poor areas. For the securing goal, we provided diverse range of staff programming to encourage positive, active use of parks throughout the course of the day, with particular emphasis on programming at parks with security concerns. And to continue on the implemented goals, on the goal of connecting, we began using online tools to help the public locate and navigate their way to park and open spaces, sites, and facilities. With partnering, we continue to partner with Fresno Metropolitan Flood Control District to maximize recreational opportunities at ponding basins through expanded seasonal access, redesign, grading, and amenity development. For advocating, we formed a city council appointed Parks Commission, you all, and the development is ongoing for operations of the Fresno Parks and Open Space System. And the last one, which is to celebrate, we have promoted park use and the benefits of parks through public relations, campaigns, marketing efforts online with social media, and through signage. And again, once you do go through the full annual report, there are a few more goals in there that we are implementing or that have been implemented already, and you can see those in there.
Sarah, can I ask another question? All the implementation of that master plan you're speaking about is referring to the 2017 master plan?
That is correct.
Thank you.
One of the next items that can be found on the annual report is the implementation of the active transportation plan. And we do have Scott Tyler, no, right?
Director Scott Mosier will be coming down if there's any questions.
If there's
on the
any
ATP
questions
side.
about this particular area here. So the ATP envisions complete, safe, and comfortable network of trails, sidewalks, and bikeways that serve all residents of the Fresno. Some of the completed projects in partnership with Public Works Department are the 18 crosswalks that were installed. There was over 3 miles of sidewalk that were constructed. We added approximately 4.6 miles of Class 2 bike lanes and approximately 6 miles of in-road bicycle facilities. We also added over 1,700 feet of green conflict paint markings to the city. And also with the planting of trees, we planted over 1,000 trees this year, which, or in 2022, which in comparison to 2021 was more than double. And the last section of our annual report will include some of the completed projects, some of the projects that are underway, and some of the projects that are currently in development. Here we go. Completed projects in the 2022 fiscal year were field lighting, hockey resurfacing, and irrigation improvement at Cary Park. There were new picnic tables added, there was some cleanup done, and new safety lighting installed at Manchester Park. Restroom and the administrative building received some rehabilitation at the Mariella Brown Community Center. There was a new shading structure placed at the Toll House Greenway. Projects that are underway are the replacement of play structure at the Dickey Playground. There's a new restroom coming at Hinton Park and a new shade structure over the play structure at Logan Park. Projects that are currently in development, we have a new park, Broadway and Elizabeth. There's the new splash pad that's being worked on for Fink White Park, and we have a new park in the works for Milburn and Dakota. And that is my brief overview of the annual report. I just wanted to express our gratitude for working with us and being patient with us. And like I mentioned, I'm ready to jump in, and all of the feedback received tonight will be well received.
Any member of the commissions have any questions, comments, or recommendations? Commissioner Cummings?
I do. I'd love to sort of follow up with the active transportation plan. As sort of mentioned from the public this evening, I think it's really important that we know where these places are. So I love how down here, we have specifically Cary Park, Manchester Park, Mariella Brown, where those crosswalks are, and the sidewalk and the bicycle lanes. I think that it would be very useful to have that mentioned. I don't know if a map is required for that, or possibly just acknowledging what area where these important sort of features are showing up. I'm very supportive of them, and I love that we're doing something about making it a lot safer for us to tool around, whether we're on foot or or on the bicycle. So I think that's really important.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that as well.
And I think Commissioner Cummings, I think we can add a map, a citywide map, kind of showing the various GIS layers where the projects kind of took place, whether it's a numbering system kind of showing you, or maybe it's a linear design showing, bike paths or whatever it may be. So we can work with Public Works on that visual.
So,
Just making sure that it's, like for the average individual,
User-friendly.
resident, that they can see, they're like, hey, where's this happening? Because we care about this. People are getting hit by cars. Like, we want to make sure that it's safer and what has been done this year over last. So,
Yes,
thank you.
totally understand that, yes.
Actually, just following up to this point, I recall that in the beginning of, like, quite a while ago, we had asked if walking distance to a park takes into account, like, if it's actually, like, walkable, like, it's, or is it just, like, the distance that takes into account? At that time, it was just the distance. Is this now, like, taking into account there's sidewalks, there's, like, people can actually walk to it, or is it just distance?
Commissioner Singh, perfect timing. Director Mosier? Scott, do you mind answering Commissioner Singh's question regarding the sidewalks? He had a specific question. If you don't mind repeating it for Director Mosier?
Yeah, so I recall in the beginning of this commission when the topic of walking distance to a park, like measuring that, had come up. We were told that it was just the distance from people's residence to a park, right? Regardless of if that street had a sidewalk, had a trail, or whatever kind of accessible like pathway to a park. Like, so my question is this map that is shown of the percentage of people in walking distance to a park now taking into account sidewalks that are actually walkable, or is it just like roads or distance?
So Commissioner Singh, sorry, I understood the question differently. That's why I called Scott up here.
Yeah.
We'll get clarification, but my understanding is proximity, not walkable sidewalks or trails, but we'll clarify that.
Commissioner Ward, then Commissioner Barraza.
Okay. I thought the report, had a lot to be proud of, and it was, I think a really good start, but I was very surprised that although it meets all of the elements of what's required in the ordinance, it's totally disconnected from the financial side of Measure P. And because at its foundation, Measure P is a sales tax, I think all of us get questions, everybody gets questions, where did the money go, So I pulled the 2022 audit so I could kind of read it together with the 2022 annual report. And I think it's really helpful. There's the whole section, the expenditure plan with project status in the audit, which kind of walks through. These are all the various areas where we put money under each element and kind of, what we accomplished with it. I did notice the most expensive investment was the acquisition of the Tower Theater to transform it into a community asset. I didn't even see that mentioned in the annual report at all, and that was the most expensive thing Measure P went to support this in 2022. So my recommendation would be to provide it with the financial information and perhaps integrate the financial information in a easy to understand way in future versions of the report.
Commissioner Barraza.
Thank you. A couple of questions. One, I noticed in the goal to provide closer access to parks within the half mile, is there a specific intent on the part of the department to increase the number of neighborhood parks, community parks, versus regional parks? That's one question. The second question is, do you guys keep track of how many folks visit our parks that are not Fresno residents?
So the answer to your last question is we do not, unless they're signing up for a program that we offer through RecTrack, our reservation system. So if somebody from, let's say, San Francisco comes through, walks through our park, we do not have data to support their attendance. At this time, we don't.
And then there was a question of neighborhood parks versus regional parks. Do you purposely try to increase the number of neighborhood parks so they're closer to the residents, or does it just happen whatever the need might be?
So again, the master plan that we have identified shows where we kind of have these park deserts. And then we also have our general plan that shows where development is going and where open spaces are identified. So we use a combination of the two. And we also look at, now that we are able to utilize some of these dollars, purchasing land where future growth may be going, which some of those parcels now, looking at one, I won't say where it's at, but it's approximately 12-acre parcel. That would be kind of a neighborhood park, or it's not quite the community park. We haven't gotten to that point yet of the design. It's just really acquiring the land, but really kind of planning where these need to go based on the growth of the city and what those two documents outline for us.
Thank you. The second part, the second question pertains to public safety. You used the word range in the section of secure, but I was actually thinking of park rangers. I would like to see a report in this document as to how that's being implemented, how public safety is being addressed, the concern about, I'm sorry if I don't say the proper technical word, the homeless population, houseless, I think they call them, or the folks that unfortunately don't have a place to live, that at times becomes a matter of concern of public safety in some parks because there isn't really a real strategy how to deal with the need of those folks. I would add that it is useful to forge partnerships with other agencies, not just the city of Fresno. The county of Fresno has a lot of agencies that help the homeless population. And I don't know what type of partnerships are forged between the city of Fresno and state agencies, federal agencies, and county government. But I wanted to point out that as a commissioner, I would be very interested to see in this report a review of that need. There happens to be a very acute need, not just in Fresno, all over California. But I think that this is a unique opportunity. It's an annual opportunity to examine what's working, what's not working, and how do we help folks that need help, but maybe that may not be the main scope of what you do, but it's a necessity that our parks be safe for residents. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Yes, Commissioner Kucharski and then Commissioner Opuda.
Thank you. I liked what Commissioner Barraza said about public safety and just understanding better how that ties into the plan, if any. And then I wanted to second Commissioner Ward's comments about the financial information. I was curious if the report, if everything in there is only Measure P funding strictly, or if there's other funding that was leveraged from the city for those programs, and being able to kind of line that out so what we know what we have authority over versus what not, and then knowing how the funding that you have is being leveraged so we can be supportive of the successes of those endeavors. So thank you.
Commissioner Opuda.
Hi, I didn't get your name.
Sarah Gaitan.
Thank you, Sarah. I have a couple of questions. One is related both to the percentage of Fresnans that live within a half-mile from a park and for Fresnans accessing park services. Do we have goals for improvement on those? Do we? Or
So we do, in the Parks Master Plan, it mentions what that ratio needs to be, the acreage per 1,000 residents. So that's a goal that I would love to say that we're going to hit in the next few years. It's a big goal, working out of a deficit here in the department, but it does mention what that should look like.
okay, that's for both residents accessing programs and services.
It's really for green space. So as far as accessing programs, I don't think we have a defined goal in the master plan. I was referring to the green space park acreage.
And the reason I bring that up is that when we have a specific target, it impacts our intentions and what we do in our programming and how we plan. So just wanted to put that out there as a possibility as we move forward.
And I know this commission has made goals in previous fiscal years regarding Camp Fresno serving 30% of underserved youth under a certain kind of border, which we've met. We do have other grants that have goals like that, but I see exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah. And then the other thing, for my edification, can you tell me what conflict paint markings are, one, and also in-road bicycle facilities? What are those?
We are going to direct this question to Scott.
I wanted to make
oh,
Scott
good.
work. That's
Yes,
why I asked
thank
those questions.
All right. Good evening, Commissioner. Scott Mosier, Public Works Director. So in regards to conflict zone markings, what those are is on both on-street painted bike lanes or on protected bike lanes on Class 4 that are covered under Measure P, Category 5. What those are is to highlight areas where it's not just protected, where there's actually a crossing of traffic in that area. So that could be, for example, a driveway, and then that'll be a green, typically a green dashed marking, and it highlights both for the cyclist and for the motorist that there is a conflict zone to be aware of.
Thank you, I got it now.
Thank you.
And the in-road bicycle facilities, what is that?
And in-road, that would be, there are different types. One is Class 2, which is just paint, and then a Class 4 facility is one where it's actually physically separated from the vehicle traffic lane by either simple posts or what some communities have done is they've actually added a raised median island in that area to separate the two. In areas with much higher rainfall, like a Portland, Seattle type situation, they've actually been able to do that in many cases by raised planters, which actually have no irrigation system feeding them. It's all natural, and the plant material is able to thrive. We would love to have that opportunity here, but unfortunately, high cost of bringing irrigation to each one.
So an example of that, would that be on Van Ness in the Tower District?
Yes, we actually have a number of Class 4 facilities in road. They're out there today. One is Van Ness in the Tower District. Also here in downtown, R Street from Ventura up to Tulare. We completed a project on First Street near Hazelwood, and we have some additional ones under construction. A very significant one through Measure P is Barstow Avenue from Blackstone all the way to Cedar Avenue at Fresno State. Right now, that's just about a week and a half away from being fully finished and ready for the first home football game.
Thank you. That also brings to mind, just as we do these reports, because facilities for me, a layperson, is a building, right? So I'm like, huh? And so just as we think about the public, as we make these reports and making, as other folks have already pointed out, making it plain language so folks understand what they're reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, sorry, just going off Dr. Puta's point, I know in the kind of more detailed report, the images of the bike lanes and the types of different Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and Class 4 are listed. But yeah, I definitely agree with Dr. Puta. I think even having visuals of like, hey, this is what it looks like, art, maybe an actual picture, just something to like, especially in the condensed report, that would be great. And then additionally, if we can, I don't know if this was already brought up, but like also like have a map of like, this is where each one was, and then the markings that are put on the map of Fresno, of wherever it is, are like distinguished as like, okay, this is a Class 1 marking, this is a Class 2 marking. I think that would make the report a lot easier to also visualize like where this is being built.
Aaron, I'd just like to follow up a little bit, make sure I understand this. The goal of Fresno's being a half mile from a park, it's I think what do we have, 40% in there right now. A bit misleading, I think unintentionally so, because it weights all parks exactly the same. A park is a park, and being a half mile away from a 10,000 square foot vest pocket versus a 100-acre regional park is a huge difference. So it is your goal then to sort of formulate this less as within a certain distance as it is a per capita area relationship? Am I saying, you know what I mean, like per acres of park per resident, if that is a clearer way of saying it?
Right. We've been really following the acres per the 1,000 acres.
Okay.
We can look to see what that may look like for maybe a more maybe detailed version of what that number really looks like. And I have to go back and look, but I believe this does not include CFD parks. These are the pocket parks within developments,
Okay.
which could then, but if we're looking at strictly just parks, we can look to see what that looks like for next annual report, which is due at the end of January. So
Sure.
we'll be coming back.
I just think that might be a more meaningful measure, honestly, as we go forward, and I think you guys probably agree. So I don't know exactly how we would represent that. It's a very clear graphic with the half mile, but I think it's really worth considering as a goal for us to be shooting for that's much more meaningful.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the other piece of information that I remember, maybe, I don't know, it might have been 5-10 years ago, had to do with the number of acres per 1,000 resident of the south versus the north of our city. I haven't lost sight of that great discrepancy we've had. And I know that with those areas that we consider the most acute need areas, that hopefully intends to create a balance between the south and the north. But I would like to see that number as we are investing more revenue, more resources, how we're actually balancing. Hopefully the objective should be that citywide we have more or less, a balanced picture. So that's something that I would be looking for when I look at the annual report. So I wanted to make that observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Singh.
Okay. I actually wanted to follow up on a previous point that Commissioner Barraza had also made about safety in our parks, and it's like how it's being reported in the annual report. I know Commissioner Barraza had touched upon, talking about the unhoused within our parks, but I'd also like to, especially in light of like recent events with, hate incidents that have been on the rise and have occurred in our parks, maybe even getting an idea of like hate crimes that have happened within our parks in the past year or two or whatever. I think having some numbers, and I'm sure the police department would be happy to even like provide those numbers to us, or just like even the type of like crimes that happen, violent crimes, non-violent, like what occurs at our parks in terms of safety beyond unhoused, which are also maybe a factor. Awesome.
Quick question on that. Would you like to have those numbers not necessarily reflected on the report, but for your use, or?
I mean, I think one of the goals of Measure P was to create safe parks, right? So I think that safety should be addressed within the report as well. So I'd like to see it somehow implemented. And maybe the way I said it isn't the best way, but yeah.
I understand.
Commissioner Cummings?
Yes, and I think right now we're bringing forth ideas on what the public might want to see, along with what we'd want to see. So not sure exactly how that should be presented in the report. I think for me, I've been thinking about, as we've agreed that there will be a process for nonprofits, organizations that do have relationships within the parks and are providing services to the community. There's so many of those sports programs that do that. There's sort of long-standing relationships even with the community centers. I wonder where that will be. I mean, I see, obviously with the Parks Master Plan, we have partner, you
yeah.
know, as the flood control district. It's like, yay, but that's like one partner, and there are so many partners. And I'm not suggesting that right here is where it goes, but when we do actually have the guidelines and the applications from these organizations and even funding to help their work, where will that be featured? Just be thinking about how we can also, I see that as kind of like they're invisible partners to us because they utilize the parks to provide services to the community. And I know that in the interest of the spirit of Measure P, many of those organizations were looking to have an opportunity to be able to apply for funding through Measure P.
Right. I can definitely begin to create some ideas around possibly having them under that goal of partnerships, but we can discuss go into further detail of like how we can add this for the upcoming report also, because I would like to make mention of all of those important partnerships.
I think Commissioner Cummings, you bring up a great point. We mentioned, organizations we have agreements with, but there are other organizations without those agreements that are utilizing parks on a daily basis, right? Coming to our programs where maybe we don't have the signed agreement, but they are using our recreation programs. Same with some of the senior centers, right? Bringing the folks in. So that's a great point that we can.
Even if there was like an addendum that had, I mean, it would be a great feature to show, there are 45 organizations, various locations, just making sure that they're recognized for their work, and then perhaps someone who reads this report recognizes that there might be an organization that they want to affiliate with, et cetera, because I just hate that they're not somehow here within this important strategy.
Right, and that was taken from the master plan, and I think we can expand upon that for the upcoming years, but that's a great idea.
Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, to support what Commissioner Cummings was just saying, I think that the addition of appendixes, in support to expand on the information that's in the annual report would be really helpful. I think it would be a way to address the financial components if there isn't a natural way to integrate them based on the language of the ordinance. I think it would be a good way to acknowledge and celebrate all of the many partners, not just those with the service provider agreements. I think all of this really helps to provide a greater context of what's happening and how it's happening in the city of Fresno.
Commissioner Oputa.
Yeah, I want to affirm Commissioner Singh's suggestion about crime reports, because if you look down the road, you are hoping that you'll see a comparison that will show a reduction in crime based on programs, services, the park rangers, and all of that. So I just wanted to affirm that suggestion. It may seem like, why would we put crime reports in here? But it fits, and then to be able to see progress would be a good thing.
Yeah, and I can see how all of that is important to the parent that wants to take their child to a park. So.
Well, and also tracking what parks are accomplishing as we continue to expand and improve.
Mm-hmm.
So are we looking for a motion to approve this, or are you just taking input on this document right now?
At the moment, we were taking input, so
Okay.
we can take into consideration also for future reports.
Okay, good. Any other comments by any other commissioners? All right, in which case we're going to close that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So we'll now move on to hearing 12A ID 23-1171, receive public input on allocations related to Measure P updates to the Parks Master Plan and Cultural Arts Plan and Annual Parks Department Budget and Capital Improvement Plan. Would any member of the public like to provide comment regarding this item?
There's no one online.
Okay. So we'll close the public comment, and does any member of the commission have questions or comments regarding this item? I'll take that as a no. In which case, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.